We will call the meeting to order. Discussion of AOL email addresses will resume at the conclusion of tonight's meeting. For now, please note this meeting is being broadcast live on CTSB TV and will also be rebroadcast on CTSB TV. And thank you to CTSB TV for being here and doing that. We will begin with hearing of visitors. If there's anyone who wanted to make a public comment. And if you can just introduce yourself.
My name is Catherine. Is this on? We're good. Catherine Burt Canton, and my two students at Morris. Jack, who's in third grade, he's 8, and Eloise, who's in pre-K. And I just have a few comments. Keep it brief. First thing, is there a video link? I know there was a Zoom link during COVID for these meetings, but is there still one that exists now?
Right now, there is not because it's broadcast.
Okay, so I was, my thought was a lot of parents that I know could not come. This is a terrible time for most parents. I was able to get away because I come from a 2-parent household, but it's still difficult. And I work in video production, and so I had a suggestion of doing both to get more community engagement and with the parents and participation. People also wouldn't then complain that they don't know what's going on. With this camera, you can get another cable, and it feeds into Zoom automatically. You can mute your people that are watching. You can control unmuting them when they want to speak. It also would create a transcript automatically, so anybody that's taking notes could either take them still and do them together to be efficient, or you can don't have to have that. You also could record the meetings and also the questions and everything, and have it in like a little library online for everyone to be able to see and use. This has been brought up a couple times here already, and also to a town hall meeting, and also at the LCC, and nothing's happening. So I don't know what I do next or what I'm supposed to do, but I would like to see some movement with that for the next meeting. Do I go next? Is that cool?
Well, that's helpful.
Thank you.
And then you'll tell me what happens next, or how does that work?
We will.
I've never done this, so you add it to the agenda. Is that what happens?
Sorry?
What happens next with that?
Well, now that we've heard your comment, we will look into it and see what we can do.
Okay, so I will know. How do I find out what the result is?
We will, when we release the next agenda, have information about how it's visible.
Okay, and just out of curiosity, why are you choosing just to do cable? The local cable channel, because I don't have cable, so there's no way I could watch it or have access to sit down and watch a live stream at this hour. Some people may, and I know there's different age demographics, but is there a reason behind only doing that?
It is how it has always been done. It's now that we've had your comment, it's definitely something we can look into.
Right, no, during the pandemic though, recently there was a Zoom link, so just why was it taken away?
Usually it's been one or the other. When we had the Zoom device, we used Zoom. When we have the camera, we used CTSB, but we can look into seeing what we can do to broadcast.
If anyone wants to talk, you can do both in one. So.
Yep.
May I just quickly, Lauren? Mm-hmm. So I just want to say that we were going solely by Zoom for a while, and then we were having major issues with people saying they couldn't hear anything that was happening.
Well, that's why if you have a cable that goes in, all goes in.
We'll look into your thing, but I'm just explaining to you that the reason we went COVID from Zoom to then being in person and stopped using the Zoom link and brought CTSB in was because people were concerned that they weren't able to see it and there was no ability to look at it later. Yep. So I understand what you're saying, so we'll look into it and find out.
Awesome, thank you. If I can help to offer any of those solutions, I have the link for the stuff, for the gear. And just the second thing is professional development days. I'm aware that Lenox was not a part of the professional development day a couple weeks ago or last week. I was at one of the events at the Lindy Center for a program that I'm doing, and I know that they're doing the 2 days for the Thanksgiving holiday, which is not super efficient for a lot of the parents to not have. Some of the parents work in different school systems in different places, so it's to not be aligned with the rest of the county is difficult. I have some teachers who were supposed to present at different things that were going on around Berkshire County. I think there was like 20 different events that were already planned and in place, and they weren't able to speak at them, to participate in them, and also be with their peers to see what's going on in the rest of the county, or hear things that the other teachers in the county have been able to hear for example, the program I'm running. And so I'm curious why you guys chose this way. I know you've planned your own professional development day and it looks beautiful and great and like so rich and wonderful, but the teachers then miss out on different opportunities and our students miss out on opportunities that are going on within the county. And I'm just curious also, it seems to me that it could be, are you spending money on organizing your own event on the 2 days of the Thanksgiving holiday to organize those professional development days?
We can have a longer conversation about TV. We have to wrap up public comment, though. It's a
Sure.
chance for you
So
to
my
raise your
question
comment.
is solely, it seems to me a waste of money if you're already having events that are going on for the community and then you're doubling down and doing something specifically for Lenox that they miss out on, then why do that? If they want to plan events here for the rest of the community, great. But I feel like it's not very inclusive, and it gives our children also. It looks like we are not a part of the county, in my opinion.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments?
Good evening, Dr. Collins and committee board members. My name is Eric Krudiak, and I'm the business manager for the Laborers Local 473. And we represent the custodians at the Lenox Memorial Middle School and High School and Morris Elementary School. I've been the business manager for 2 years, but I've been a laborer for 37 years, and I actually worked in this building and Morris Elementary 30 years ago. I come to you tonight. We're currently, we started our negotiations for the contract, or we're in a preliminary start of the negotiations for the contract for the custodians. And I know you're in the budget process, and I would like to start give you some information about our custodians. We have some custodians have been there over 30 years. 90% of them have been there for 7 years or more. In the current contract, they have increases 2.25% for 2022, 2% for 2023, and 2% for 2024. And through the agreement that we signed in 2022, we added a longevity bonus, which adds about 2% to the salaries to the custodians. So roughly over the 3 years, that comes out to about 12.25%. Unfortunately, inflation during that time has rose about 17%. My ask tonight is you take that in consideration when you're building your budget for the 2026 and in anticipation of our negotiations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? All right. Correspondence, we did receive a couple of notes in advance of this meeting, in particular the CHPE curriculum framework guidance, which is the health and physical education curriculum, which will cover in more depth on the superintendent's report, but wanted to acknowledge that we received a couple of messages from parents expressing concerns about it, in particular one from Megan and Eric Kirby, noting that they had serious concerns about the proposed adoption of the new sex ed curriculum, also noting that we should be clearer in agenda items and so forth in what the topics will be, and then saying that in a district that values and respects all families, they are just to consider and respect those whose beliefs may differ from the majority with transparency and open dialogue. So we will come back to that topic at the end of the superintendent's report. And with that, I believe we are on to the board report and the meeting minutes of October 21st. If there are any comments or a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve October 21st school committee meeting minutes.
Yes.
The second goes to Mr. Munch. Any comments? All in favor? Aye. Unanimous. And then wanted to spend a few minutes on a recap from the MASC conference, which we were fortunate to have several of our members attend. I don't know if we want to start with you or Ryan. Do you want to start?
Well, I'm happy to start. So first of all, thank you. I think that I've attended a number of years to the MASC conference. It's a really great opportunity to have a number of different sessions of learning and digging into topics that are helpful to our work behind the scenes here at the school committee. I typically try to go to the legal updates, try to get some sense of what is happening as far as legal cases. Some of them, a little dry, but it does look at the issue of the Board of Special Education Appeals. I do feel grateful. I think that there's good communication within our Student Services Director. I think I saw Brian Kelly come in and his support team along with you, Dr. Collins, and our administrators around trying to support students in having a evaluations, testing, and an education plan that fits their needs. In some districts, when that's not happening, there's a whole appellate process, and it can be quite difficult for schools if you come out on the wrong end of that. So I learned a lot about that. It was really helpful to kind of add to the process. We don't typically do that here, but it's really good to know that it's happening, and I think it's great to have the background on how that works. Also, there was a lot of conversation, I think understandably, about the the legislation to eliminate the graduation requirement of the MCAS. And another comment from an attorney who was presenting that I think is really great is evaluating if a student otherwise would have been qualified to graduate, but because of being unable to pass their MCAS, they were denied a diploma. There was an encouragement that school administrators really look at whether or not they can support students in getting a diploma if they've otherwise met their requirements. I did talk with Dr. Collins about that, and he said he wasn't aware of anyone that might fit that bill, but I think it would be important to think about our students and that if getting a diploma was a barrier for them. So that was an interesting part of it. There were several other sessions that are about school culture, also about supporting our administrative team on great leadership, and then opportunity to hear some good speakers talking about different aspects of the election. There was a great speaker who was actually Tim Shriver, talking about dialogue, respectful dialogue, and how in challenging times it's really important and how we can model that for our students. So that was very inspiring. He also, with the Shriver family, is very involved in Special Olympics and talked about the wonderful unified sports programs that we are newly involved in. So he showed a couple videos about how wonderful that is, and it felt really great to have that connection. That's something that Lenox is doing, and thank you all for supporting that. And that was it. So that was kind of the summary. There were some sessions also, by the way, about design and architecture that I'll share at another time. And I think, again, speak about how spaces can support student learning, small group breakouts, and also spaces being really vibrant and able to be used by the community at large, which I know is a conversation that we're having. So that was kind of my 3 days, and it was really great. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And
Yep, I made it to the conference a little bit late because I'm trying to get another program up and going, so that presentation cut my time at the conference short. I made it to 2 programs. One was gifted advanced learners, and that was very interesting to me. It was also mentioned in the last meeting that Ms. Kelly is going to be part of that on the council. Basically saying that Massachusetts is like tied for last place, one of 2 of last place for recognizing and having the programs for the gifted students in the area. So they're working on that and getting, just hired someone new, I guess. I don't recall what they said his name? His name?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I couldn't find the information after they said it. Yeah, so they're working on getting programs going again.
great, thank you. Anything else from your experience?
Just to point out that it's a joint conference with the School Committee Association and the Superintendent's Association. So really a wonderful opportunity for both groups to be in the same room and be exchanging ideas. I'd also like to point out that Ms. Fenton, Dr. Ames, myself, Phil Fogelman, had a presentation about our early efforts to have a culture of belonging, and it was standing room only, and really seemed to resonate with a lot of the participants there, and there was some really good back and forth. We weren't presenting with the idea that we've cornered the market or solved the problem, but that our learnings were worth sharing and learning from those in the audience. So that was a good experience as well.
And it will be on again next year. We'll have all the information out. Sounds like I am still jealous to get to one. It seems like an excellent opportunity. So we will see who can make it next year. Thank you for that update and for taking the time to go. Superintendent's report.
All right. Well, I guess appropriately, one of my items, I'll move it to the top, was about our PD next Monday and Tuesday. And you'll recall that last year we did one of our in-house PD days, very specific, geared toward the needs of our teaching staff. And the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Some of them said it was the best PD and most meaningful PD that they'd had in their careers. So we expanded it. We expanded it this year, and we will be having a follow-up survey afterwards to see what folks liked and didn't like, and did it make sense, and did the 2 days work. And we'll also be doing a survey to families, because we've created this Thanksgiving week break as well. And we'll see how that goes. And based on what those results are is what will form our opinions for what we do for the next year. I did want to give a shout out. Certainly the admin team and the LEA's PD team came together and worked to come up with what topics and what resonated and what would be the equivalent of some of the best graduate level education that you would get, and it was a good, really good discussion, and I think we've hit that well. But I want to give a shout out to Holly Sewells, who took on creating the program and having to interact with every presenter to get the information that we needed from them, and to fine-tune the schedule. And there has probably been 25 iterations of it, and Holly's just done a phenomenal job with that. Thank you. Next is, some community members have come with the idea of naming a piece of equipment after a community member. And looking through the policy, we don't have a policy for that. We have a policy for naming buildings, facilities, but we don't have a policy for naming a part of a building or a piece of equipment or a part of the grounds. So what I'm recommending, absent the policy, is that when I get a request, what I would do is establish a naming committee, 2 school committee members, 2 staff members, 2 community members, an administrator, and a student if it's at the middle of the high school. And the naming committee would be charged with just vetting the individual, making sure that there'd be broad community support for that, and that their contributions to the school or the town's youth rise to a level of a naming honor, and then devising a objective rating system, a rubric for that, and then giving me a summative narrative along with the aggregate rubric, whether they are recommending or not recommending. And if they do recommend, then in turn I would bring it to the school committee, because you have the sole authority for naming items. And I would give that to you along with my recommendation. If that sounds reasonable, or you'd like to make any changes, it's my proposal.
And we would have that as a lettered policy in the policy.
And when the policies, yeah, and then as the policy subcommittee works forward, maybe coming up with, right, or adding to the naming of facility policy would be great.
All right. We have, just on the policy front, we'll finish off section J with the admissions policy. Today, we're meeting with Liz LaFond next week to finish off the last section. And so at our next meeting, we'll review that, and then we'll get to start on new policy, so that can be at the top of the list.
Outstanding, outstanding. All right, so then, in addition, I wanted to give a shout out to Jenna White and Mary Sorrentino. I met with them on Friday, and I just can't tell you how impressed I am with the work they've been doing with the mentoring, with Brenda's guidance, but our mentoring program, I think, is going to be something to truly be envied. It's not just the letter of the law, it's the spirit of somebody coming into our district as a brand new teacher, and during their first 3 years having true support, and the mentoring being by teachers, by our mentor leadership team. They have just a wonderful vision, and I couldn't be happier with what they're doing and their commitment to it. I think at some point that the state will recognize, and there will be accolades, because this is really going to be a model for other schools. The greatschools.org had their College Success Awards and named LMHS as one out of 1,436 high schools nationwide to receive that award. U.S. News and World Report has their Best Schools in the Country award, and they have Morris in the top 10% in Massachusetts. The middle school, the top 7% in Massachusetts, and the high school in the top 9% in Massachusetts, and the high school is in the top 5% in the nation. So really, kudos to the staff and to the students for making that happen. We had 27 recipients of the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship, which is very impressive. And as part of that, they can attend any Massachusetts college, university, tuition-free if they elect to. That's wonderful. Next up, we have the Washington, D.C. field trip request. Sarah?
You can just, if you can sit with Melissa over there.
I think this is in your packet.
Thank you.
All right. Hi, everybody. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Sarah Hamilton. I am the 10th grade history teacher at LMMHS. I'm here to gain approval for the 10th grade Washington, D.C. trip for this year. Robin Getzen and I had this field trip together as the teachers who teach all of the 10th graders at LMMHS. Last year, we transitioned the trip from an 11th grade yearly trip to a 10th grade yearly trip by taking both the 10th and 11th graders last year. So we did a dual trip last year just so that the current 12th graders wouldn't have missed out on the opportunity to go to DC. This year and all future years, we'll be taking the 10th grade, and that will be the plan moving forward. This trip is designed to provide students with an educational opportunity that combines history, civics, culture, and personal growth. What students experience on this 4 days aligns with my 10th grade history course. Being the early U.S. history course, we focus a lot on the Constitution, a lot on building D.C. The trip is planned to run Wednesday, March 12th through Saturday, March 15th. If you look at the itinerary that's provided, we will be visiting the Capitol Building, the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, the National Museum of African American History and Culture, the Museum of Natural History, the National Museum of the American Indian, the National Portrait Gallery. This year we've added the National Zoo. My students found out about the panda exchange and found out the pandas are there, so they requested that we go. So we'll be doing that Saturday before we leave. The Udvar Hazy Center, and we'll also visit the Washington Monument, Lincoln Memorial, the Korean War Memorial, the Vietnam War Memorial, Jefferson Memorial, among others that we get to while we're there. I've also provided you a price breakdown for the trip. Both the history and English department have each budgeted for $17,000, totaling $34,000 that we have available for the trip. Based on the invoices that we've acquired, the 2 buses will cost us $14,700. The hotel for those 3 nights for all of the rooms will be about $15,883. The hotel security that we hire for the 3 nights will be about $1,746. Meals for teachers that we've budgeted for will be about $1,400. The U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum donation, the tickets are free, but they recommend a donation. We have encumbered $200 for that, totaling $33,929. The only cost to students will be their meals, which is 8 meals plus tips, is about $225 per student to attend the trip. And we're looking for approval from the committee in order to run this trip. And I'm here to field any questions that you all have for me and Robin.
Terrific presentation.
Thank you.
Compliment
I give that credit to Robin. Guessing.
This is awesome.
It's a lot to plan, for sure.
Do you have a separate ability to have an allowance for students who might struggle with that amount of money for meals?
So there is, if I'm getting this correct, I don't remember, the Walker Fund, yes. We utilize the Walker Fund pretty much every year. We ask students and families that will have trouble obviously coming up with the $225 to reach out to us, and then we work with the Walker Fund to be able to allow them to come with us on the trip.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I give a quick plug? For those who are watching, the Walker Fund is an opportunity for people to donate to ensure that all students have access to events that happen in the school. It's named after a retired principal, Dr. Walker, who was here for, I think, approximately 25 years. And when he retired, he chose to give the money that might have been for a retirement party or something back to the students, and we've utilized that. So we often ask parents, when you are paying for something, if you have an opportunity, if you have the ability to do so, to add a little extra into the Walker Fund, and periodically, if that's something that people are interested in doing to make sure students have access, we would welcome that. It's my little plug.
Because it is out of state, it requires a vote of the committee, and it has my recommendation.
I'll move to approve the field trip to Washington, D.C. for the 10th grader as presented so ably by Ms. Hamilton.
I will second.
All in favor? Aye. It is approved.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next is staffing updates. We've got a couple people in the works, but I can announce Nicole Farrell is a para-behavioral therapist who we've hired through a contract. As you know, that the candidate pools aren't as healthy as they once were, and we've found on several occasions that when we weren't able to find a candidate, we've had to turn to contracting a contractor that provides staff, and that's what we've done here. And next is the year-to-date capital report. Melissa.
Let me switch it.
Down.
I've been eyeballing this since I got here. Just enough so I can lay this thing on flat in case any surprises come up.
No, you're fine. So I wanted to go through the capital projects. This is money that was appropriated at the town meeting in May for use this year, and our focus has been, in the past few years, safety and security of the buildings, replacement of equipment as needed, and some, other fairly major projects that we'll go through here in this report. Focus areas, security and maintenance, the feasibility study for the LMMHS addition, which was completed just recently. The playground structure replacement at Morris, also completed. Replacement of equipment as needed. We've replaced some mowers, scrub brushers, added some equipment to existing mowers to make the outdoor grounds work a little bit, I don't want to say easier, but the equipment helps the custodial staff get things done more efficiently, and our technology renewals come out of here. So we typically budget about 50,000. Sometimes it comes in right around there, but mostly it comes probably between 40 and 45, where we replace at the 6th grade level and the 9th grade level, and then also some staff equipment, teacher laptops if necessary, or like CAD lab or some area like that if necessary for full replacement. So that would come out of the capital as well. And we sort of set that aside every year so that we can stay on the renewal cycle. So I've broken it down into the two main areas, Morris Elementary School and LMMHS. So at Morris, for building security, we've purchased additional radios so that every staff at both buildings have these radios, and there are additional radios available in case one is lost or malfunctions. We've also put in radios for town staff. Should they come into the building, they're able to grab a radio and communicate if they need to with staff that's in the building. We are currently working on a request for quotations for guard glass shield, which will just strengthen the glass in the buildings, and for both buildings. So you'll see that approximately 30,000 to 35 will be set aside for the elementary, and a higher number will be set aside for the middle high. Building maintenance, we upgraded the elevator, and you'll see a lot of this on the next slide because we've done it at both schools to meet state regulations. We're switching the lighting in both buildings to LED. That's currently happening and will be done by the end of December. We put in a new office in the library at Morris for additional staff. We have, if it's in yellow, it's not done yet. So on the, probably going to happen this year is to replace the backup boiler at Morris, repair and replace the entry doors, and ongoing roof repair, which you see on this every year. So as things happen, we have to repair and maintain. And the grounds and fields at Morris, we installed a new playground structure, thanks to Principal Kelly helping me with that. And we utilized the remainder of ESSER that had to be spent by September for the bulk of the project, but we also had to use $73,000 from the capital fund to get that installed, done, and operating for the kids, ready for the kids in September. We've also added picnic tables to both schools. We replaced the ones that were outdoor here
and we added some to Morris. At LMMHS, again, additional radios. The yellow with the guard glass shield, that is in process. Repair of entry doors will happen this year. We completed, or has happened, we completed the elevator upgrade. Lighting switch to LED, new auto scrubber here, and sprinkler head replacement throughout the building was completed. Nick. It's, it does the floors. Yes.
Yeah. Those dented smells nice.
Yeah, see, this is what I was gonna do, this thing.
It is a device that puts the water down, scrubs the floor, and sucks the water.
Yeah,
up
it sucks it back up.
Yes.
Afterwards, instead of mopping, leaving a wet.
Yes. All.
Thank you. Outdoor picnic table replacement here, and an attachment for the, is it a skag mower?
It's a lawnmower, yeah.
Lawnmower, a leaf vacuum unit, so it sucks up the leaves for you, yes. Glad you're here.
What was the sprinkler head replacement?
We have to have them checked every year, and there were a few that were, came back as faulty, so they recommended replacing the system, the heads on most of them, if not all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So like all these are new heads?
yeah. And technology, as I said, device renewals, Chromebooks, teacher laptops if necessary, and replacement of network switches, which moves the internet along for everyone. And I think that that's happening at Morris still. It's fairly complete here, if not complete. So that's what we've done so far this year. And we'll work with developing next year's plan, and I believe that will focus as well on safety and security and needs within the buildings. Some may be greater than others, but we'll prioritize and come up with a plan. I believe in the January meeting, we'll be talking about that.
I have a random question that fits here as well as anywhere. With HVAC at LMHS,
We used a bunch of ESSER money for that. Did that go toward, I know there's always a problem with cooling second floor classrooms and so forth. Is that what we did with the HVAC, or was that a different project?
So here, we had a lot of units that weren't working properly. So much of that was spent repairing and getting them up and running so that the airflow was better than it was. And really, the money was spent here. There was some spent at Morris, but this is where the need was.
So it wasn't like mini splits for rooms, it was the core HVAC for them?
Right, and we do have purifiers we purchased, but that wasn't with ESSER, that was way at the beginning. And they're probably still in use in some of the classrooms, if not all. We still use ours at the central office.
And a few years ago, I think I remember we did a building automation system upgrade here.
That's it. Any other questions on capital? Thank you.
All right, next is the budget forecast and discussion for FY '26.
Okay, so here we go. I thought we'd start with a review of last year so that we have an idea of the numbers that we were working with last year. And then we can go into what we know so far for this year. There's a lot of unknowns. It's early on for the development of the budget. There's inflationary rates that we do know will be fairly accurate. But there are some areas that we won't know for a while yet. So last year we had a gross operating budget, that's everything, all in, without grants though, or capital, $19,174,165. That is operating, what it takes to run the district and its daily needs. That includes personnel and supplies and services and transportation. We had a level service increase of 1.242 million. And then we added value to the level service. We have a new assistant principal at Morris. We have a facilities coordinator that was developed. Am I forgetting anything else there, Bill, for the value added? I think those were the two main.
Right, and we established the curriculum coordinator.
Yes, thank you. The curriculum coordinator was established with that. So that was value added on just from rolling dollars over to the next year, doing everything the same, was 1.2. Value added, this is now how we want to improve, was 196. Our benefits increased 6%, and that was 221,000. Then we look at our revenues. We have revenues within the district that we can control, such as school choice and circuit breaker and tuition that we receive in for students that are coming from another district, such as Richmond, or for pre-K. So we applied 2.318 revenues to offset, to reduce the gross operating budget to get to the net. The town contributed 300,000 to reduce the net impact to the taxpayer down to 16,555. And you'll recall that last year's budget, we had student services, out-of-district services, special ed services, that increased a bit. That was the bulk of the 300,000 that the town contributed to help us try to get that controlled, at least financially for the tax rate. So expense considerations for this budget, we have our inflation rates, U.S. goods, services projected to be at plus 2.1%. Our health benefits through Berkshire Health Group, I'm anticipating a 9% increase for active plans. That may be a little on the conservative side and hopefully a little high. They vote at the end of January, and I anticipate it'll be in that neighborhood, but I'm hoping it'll be maybe 1 or 2 digits lower than that. We do have our retiree plans, those who are over age 65 or older qualified for MedX. Their rate plans went up 19% effective January 1st, and that was a vote of the health group. And what happens there is you have to look at claims versus premiums collected, and the pharmaceutical portion of the MedX plan really bumped up expenses in that plan. So it was increased by such a high amount because it's been slowly, incrementally going up, maybe 1%, maybe not. But unfortunately, at this point, that was the correct rate to set to maintain the health of the fund. Utilities, we're anticipating.
On just on benefits, how much of our benefits spending is active adult?
Versus retiree?
So our active probably is about 2 million or so, 1.9. Our retirees are under 1 million, maybe, and some are on regular plans. So, but maybe about 800 to 900,000. Utilities, we're anticipating a 5% increase. And that would be across the board with heat and electricity. And it's a generic number right now. The town has contracts with suppliers, so we'll have to wait and see. I think one is being negotiated before the end of the year, so I'll have to communicate with the town and make sure that this is still the right number. We did have a conversation already, and that is what they're using as well for their increases. And as well for the health benefits, they're going to estimate 9% at this point. So then we also have contractual obligations. 2 of our 3 units have contracts expiring at the end of this year. Unit A, which which is our certified staff, our teachers, psych, school adjustment counselors, and then our custodial staff. Both have contracts ending at this year, so we'll be in negotiations with both of them. We have started with Unit A. The custodial will be probably, I think we were able to get it done within a couple months last year. So probably maybe once we hit around the corner of the new year, we'll start that. And then Unit C, which is our support, the paraprofessionals, both instructional and non, their contract calls for a 3% increase in their salaries, as well as increases in other areas like teacher coverage rates and things like that. Another big portion of the budget is, we always have the benefits and the salaries. That's the bulk of the budget. But special ed is also an important and a large part of the budget. We're anticipating at this point, and this could change at any moment depending on what occurs, but a decrease in out-of-district tuition of about $50,000. If that holds, that will still give us a little bit of a buffer if something does occur. Transportation, we're seeing an increase of $35,000. So when you have a student who is out of district and then comes back to, say, a day placement, the transportation goes up, the tuition may go down, but the transportation goes up. So we have that kind of flip-flopping here and there. And the Operational Services Division of Massachusetts has estimated that social services programs such as placements, services required, OT, PT, will be going up about 3.67%. That's their guess. Or that's what they're saying it should go up, and typically the placement tuition will go up by that amount. So revenues, we want to offset the gross budget again with revenue application. And this year, we're anticipating to be a little shy of last year's. And when I was presenting last year, I don't know if you recall, but I had what we were using last year, and then I did have a slight decrease in this year coming up. So we're looking at school choice at 1.8 million. There is a revision that's typically done in December once we send new numbers, and that number that we receive monthly could go up, it could go down, and I'll adjust that as that occurs. Circuit breaker, we're receiving $212,000. We're receiving it this year. It's going to stay in the bank and offset next year's budget, and we'll spend it next year. So we claimed it, we receive it, we offset, and that'll be $212,000. And typically that's been about $70,000 or so, so there is a jump in that, which is helpful. For tuition accounts, non-choice really is Richmond students, and that's targeted to be at about $145,000 of that revenue to be offset, to use as an offset. Pre-K, about $60,000. We also use pre-K tuition for supplies, not much. It's typically salaries. All of this is mostly used to offset salaries, but we might have some supplies in pre-K and field trips and things like that. And then miscellaneous revenue, which would be the Duffin Theater, use of facilities. That would be about $25,000. And again, what comes in from the Duffin either is utilized to pay some of the custodial wages that we need to pay if they're here after hours. The theater manager, that salary is reduced in the operating by a portion of that budget, typically about $15,000. So we do have that, and that fluctuates quite a bit. Those aren't as level as the major funds. But when we look at what we have in then and what we're planning on getting, you like to keep a balance in there for things that may occur. But you also want to use the revenue to reduce the impact. Does to the taxpayers. So that's the plan right now, but it's initial, and most likely you'll see somewhat different numbers, but in this ballpark.
So the downward variance on the total, even with the extra 150K of circuit breaker, so it's like 225K less, mostly in school choice, I assume, because we drew down more out of the fund last year than we will
We
this
did, we did take more last year than we had in the past, because with the town contributing, we wanted to use more as well to sort of do the same thing. But the variance is only 76,000 year over year.
And so is 1.8 closer to what we typically done for school?
That's a
choice?
little high too. We've
It's
been
still
doing about
low.
1.7, but
The fund is-
we'll still be okay
the
there.
fund is still healthy?
We'll still have a bit of a balance when all is said and done, in case something comes up. So this is level service, initial, very preliminary, day one projections. So salaries, we were about 11.5, all salaries. That's administrative, everyone in the school district last year, this current year. And we really can't estimate those. We're negotiating 2 contracts, so we really don't know where that'll end up. So we're keeping that as to be determined. It's just too early to estimate. The benefits, as I said, we're looking at 9% plus the 19% for MedX. So that's $4,050,000. Instructional services and goods, that's about a 5% increase, or 6%, I believe it is. Special ed went up a bit. But that's not new services. This is continuation of services with an inflationary factor applied. Technology up a bit, again, inflation. Operations and maintenance. All of this is not salaries, only that one line incorporates salaries. Everything else is goods and services. Up a bit too, to 561. Transportation, we have a 4% increase coming up in next year for our regular everyday bus transportation. And we've also been working with Lee Public Schools and letting our vocational students jump on their van and have a ride back and forth to Taconic. So we pay per student for that. So it fluctuates based on the number of students that are on the van, but we're looking at probably about 18 to 20,000 this year for that expenditure. So for level service initial, about a 483,000, increase, and really just applying those inflationary rates you saw on a few slides before. So what's next? We are going to be reviewing personnel, estimate the impacts of the contract renewals as we move along in the process. We'll monitor retirements, resignations, new personnel needed, et cetera. Retirements, we ask for anyone to give us a notice by the end of December, but they're not required to. So they do filter in after that date, but it'll give us an idea of who's planning on leaving at the end of the year. And I do know of one, it's not formal, but I do believe that we have one in Unit A that will retire at the end of the year. Mid-year this year, we have 2 people going, one at the end of this week, and one in March. So those will be replaced. And so the salaries will, once we replace them, we know where those replacements sit, I'll be able to move the salaries forward next year. And then we'll meet with the principals, department chairs, directors, estimate the cost for all line items, and evaluate programs, both existing and any new priorities they may want to put into place. We'll have those discussions, and then move forward with costs for the priorities that the principals, superintendent, want to get going for next year. And then hopefully we'll adjust the estimated cost of benefits. This is an initial increase of 9%. I'm hoping it ends up around 7, but I think 9 could be 9. So I'd rather go with the higher and drop it down versus coming back in a couple months and saying, oh, we need another number there instead. So the 9% is where I think it's a good rate right now. That 18% should be 19%, and that's increasing on 1/1/25. So we have 6 months in this current budget with the increase, and then we'll have 6 months with the increase plus probably another increase for the last 6 months of the year. And the timeline. So from now to December, we're going to be working on operating capital personnel budgets review. We'll give an overview to the school committee on January 27th. Then in February, we'll have the individual presentations for LMMHS, all the departments, Morris, all of their areas, special ed, technology, operations and maintenance, central office. We'll have all of those broken out with information on each individual area. March 10th is the school committee deliberation of the budget and the capital plan discussion for next year. March 24th is the public hearing and where the school committee will vote to formally approve the budget. And then May 1st, well, hopefully formally approve the budget, and May 1st is the annual town meeting where it goes to the taxpayers for approval. And that's where we are right now. Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Are you still doing the zero-based budgeting?
Yes, we do. We pull it down, look at numbers,
Yep.
students, needs, et cetera. Yep.
Thank you.
Next is the Health and PE Curriculum Framework Guidance Update from DESE and its impact here. So Dr. Ames will speak to that.
Is there going to be a presentation or?
Slides or just?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, check this. Okay, and I'll go back to my spot.
It's going to be tough to follow, Melissa, but I'll do my best. Tonight I was hoping just to speak briefly about the frameworks themselves, how they're structured, and then speak to the work that we currently do within those frameworks. So these frameworks have been in development for a few years now. They are for health and PE. DESE starts with, it's a very, very format-heavy document. They start with guiding principles and go on and on and on. And the meat of the frameworks is there are 7 practices that they spell out, and I'll just give you a couple examples. The first practice, for example, is decision-making and problem-solving. Another practice is movement skills, for example. So there are 7 of those. The standards themselves are distributed within those practices. And it's further complicated by the fact that they split it up into 4 age-appropriate sections. So you have pre-K to second grade, grades 3 through 5, grades 6 through 8, and grades 9 through 12. So the document itself starts with pre-K through 2, and you have all 7 of those practices listed for pre-K through 2, and then you have the standards themselves listed among the practices. The standards, there are 9 of them. I won't read them all, but just to give you a couple examples. One of them is healthy relationships. One of them is personal safety. One of them is substance use and misuse, for example. So it's sort of 4 sub-documents for the appropriate ages, and then you have all the practices, and then within the practices you have the standards. This is a very, very robust set of frameworks, and it's certainly not, as is the case with all frameworks, it's not DESE's intention that we cover all of this, but it's a very, very comprehensive look at all the things you could cover at different age groups within these practices and within these standards. Nothing we do currently falls beyond what's outlined in the latest frameworks that DESE is calling on districts to either adopt or adapt. Our efforts toward these standards happen primarily in grades 6, 7, and 8, where students take a semester course. Again, we don't begin to cover all of this, but to the extent that we do address what's contained in these frameworks, it happens largely in middle school. Excuse me. There are 2 themes within these standards that we have in years past and moving forward we will continue to talk to parents about in advance, and giving them the opportunity to opt out of parts of our health and wellness curriculum in the middle school. The biggest one is reproductive issues, sex education. Parents are given an opt-out letter with the course syllabus, and if parents decide that their student they don't feel they're quite ready for this, they can opt out of that chapter, that unit in our offering. We use Get Real in grades 6, 7, and 8. There is, the way it's organized, what some families might want to wait to expose their child to is contained within a single unit toward the end of the semester. Parents are, again, they're given this opt-out letter with the syllabus at the beginning of the course. They're reminded of this at back-to-school night. And we communicate with them directly prior to the unit as well. I think it's worth noting that last year was our first full implementation of Get Real, and we didn't have any families who chose to opt out. We do offer it as a real. It's certainly not, I should say, we're certainly not discouraging anybody from opting out. We're saying that somehow there are valid reasons why families might want to wait. For students who do choose to opt out, we have an alternate setting for them. We don't simply send them to the library with a book. We have some alternate assignments from the Get Real program that they can work on with some guidance. We certainly don't want it to be seen as punitive. Back to the frameworks themselves, traditionally there are some families who are concerned about exposing their child to the sexual reproductive themes early, and they choose to wait. I think part of why principals are asked to present these to their districts and their community is because there's some other themes as well in these new frameworks. They're really throughout the frameworks, and I've chosen I'm going to just highlight one of them that I think is reflective of the tone of a lot of the frameworks. Well, I took this standard that I'll read in just a moment from these frameworks, I really do feel that a lot of what this addresses is taught in a lot of our classes in this building. In 6th grade, English language arts, in 9th grade history, in 10th grade math, certainly in our elective classes in the high school. My point is, some of what's called out in these health and PE frameworks is part of our discussions throughout the building, both during instructional time and beyond. And it's certainly not something that you could restrict to health and PE frameworks, nor would you want to. So this standard is from the 6 through 8 standards, and it reads, it's very short. Identify behaviors, policies, and practices in the school community that promote or hinder dignity and respect for all individuals, including those of different sexual orientation, gender identities, and gender expression. So that standard is reflective of many, many, many more in these frameworks. And I think what's important to take from it is that it's not, there are guardrails. It's framing the conversation. It's not saying this is what you should teach or even how you should teach it, but it's saying these are some themes that would be appropriate at this age to discuss. I wasn't in school this morning. I was at a training in Franklin, Mass. You're on the pike for a while and you hear NPR sort of cycles through, I don't know if it's a 20-minute or 30-minute loop, but you hear the same story a couple times. And the president of Dartmouth College was interviewed this morning. And as I was thinking about what I would share with you this evening, the story came up and she said, it's not our job to teach our students what to think, but it's our job to teach them how to think. And I think a lot of these frameworks are aimed exactly at that. They're not taking sides on any of these issues that are discussed, but they're framing them, literally, these frameworks, in a way that's accessible to our students and to our teachers, that will lead to healthy discussions and hopefully healthy outcomes in a broader sense. I'm somewhat familiar with the frameworks. I've spent quite a bit of time reviewing them. Happy to answer questions about them, but it's not something I teach, and certainly they're new themselves, so you'll forgive me if I don't have all the answers.
Thank you, that was very helpful.
Can you just explain, like, next steps, like, process, like, is this already in place? Is there a vote that needs to be done here? Is there more discussion to be had before this is put in place? Is it a public forum thing? Like, what's the next steps?
So, then, if there was a change, our recommendation would be that you'd vote affirmatively for the guidance again as the guardrails. We don't believe that students would see a big difference in what happened, but whatever you voted upon, its action would take place next year. Right? We'd be looking at next year's curriculum. So, and your vote would, I mean, it's up to the school committee when you vote, but I suspect that your vote would be sometime in the late spring, after you'd had a time to hear from the community and weigh it and probably have more questions and such.
Yeah, Dr. Collins, just to add, it's a strange outlier in that, in general, we go over frequently that we do not deal with curriculum on the school committee. Massachusetts law creates a specific carve-out for the health and PE curriculum, where DESE is still creating frameworks and guidelines like everywhere else, but specifically for that issue, it is specifically left to school committees to choose to adopt something. So whenever the last version came out 10 plus years ago, it was adopted. It's the current framework, and so it will be the framework until we choose to say we want to adopt the new framework.
So is this current framework also at the elementary level? I know you said it's mostly 6th, 7th, 8th, but is any of this brought into the elementary level at this point in time, any of this instruction?
I can speak to what we do at the elementary school. Hello. So similar to what Dr. Ames said. We use the social emotional curriculum second step. And it's just, for like healthy relationships, we're always talking about how do we show empathy? How do we respect individual differences? So there are things that we do daily that is just embedded in the curriculum that we use.
Recognizing differences.
Yes.
Gender.
Yeah, yeah.
Gender, all that at elementary as well? Is that introduced at the elementary level?
It doesn't introduce like different like labels or gender, but as a whole, as an individual. So, if I have a certain type of hobby that is different from my peer, how we accept each other.
Kindness.
So just about being a good person and being a good community member.
Okay, thank you.
And Dr. Ames, you had said when you were going through it, I think that there were two themes that you talked to parents about in advance, and there's opt-out and so forth. One of them was are they both in the sex ed bucket, or is there anything different?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we're talking about two things here, just to be clear. We're talking about the frameworks, the new frameworks, and then we're talking a little bit about Get Real, the program that we use here at LMHS, the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So Get Real is designed so that where they're talking about reproductive issues, traditional sex ed, if you will, that is sort of contained in a unit that's designed so that if there's a family who wants to opt out, it's not as if there's 2 days here and 3 days here and 1 day here. They try to sort of contain it so we can find an alternate setting for a student whose family might opt them out. The second sort of bucket of issues, if you will, it's not clearly bound in our Get Real curriculum, and it's because it really sort of, again, we talk about these issues in many of our classes, certainly as early as 6th grade, has to do with gender identity. The idea that in some cases, there's a difference between the sex that someone is assigned at birth and their gender identity, how they feel about themselves. That can be further differentiated from their sexual orientation, and how they express themselves, how they express their gender as well. The idea is, again, it's not that any of that is right or wrong. It's simply a discussion of those themes and the idea that there's dignity owed everyone in that discussion. That is not anything we can isolate or ban in our curriculum. I think a lot of us are very proud of that. It's pervasive. It's throughout the language we use in our school. But it is the reproductive issues that we can sort of neatly put in a unit at the end of the semester. And that's what we offer families the option to opt out of.
So just in terms of next steps, we will have to figure out what we want to do about having it probably on the agenda later in the spring. Are there any plans within the buildings or otherwise to give parents information or solicit input, or is that something you would look to us to do? What, if anything, do you want to have happen in the interim?
I guess the best, I think the best approach would be to get a sense of the community's thoughts on this and how we gather that information. We can determine, right, to get their thoughts, and then respond accordingly. So have an opportunity for families to express themselves, and then depending on what that is, respond accordingly, and so that you have informed decision about the constituency and what the community's feelings are, and then I think it would be for the board. I mean, it certainly would make a recommendation, but at the end of the day, the statute says the board gets to vote on what to do. That being said, for everyone watching, there's not any immediate change about to happen from what was happening before this discussion and what's happening now. Right, right?
Yeah, and I guess, what were you going to say?
I was just, you bet.
I need a little educational jargon help here. So curriculum versus a framework? What are the differences between the two, or were they the same?
They're often used interchangeably, but they're not really the same. Frameworks are what usually the DESE puts out in terms of what we hope you're covering, or this is a range of things that we would expect you, these are the guardrails that we would expect you to cover. It's I can't think of a single instance where you're expected to cover everything within those frameworks. The curriculum is what we use, is what we publish in terms of what we are going to cover, right? So,
In the way in which you're going to cover it, like detailed class plans, or is it?
that's usually referred to as a scope and sequence. Scope and sequence document would say, like, by October, we're going to be doing this, and this is the project we're going to use. A curriculum usually refers to standards within the framework and says these are the things we're going to cover, not necessarily exactly how. And for all of those, truthfully, there's a range of, some people write their curricula and it's very, very short, not a lot of details, and some people go into great detail. And their curriculum is truthfully more of a scope and sequence document. So there are no standards per se.
So it wouldn't really be right to think of a curriculum as a specific set of teaching things you're going to do in the classroom?
No.
Right.
Like a collection of lesson plans, for example?
Right.
No.
Exactly.
No.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I think I was going to say that depending on exactly, we could have another conversation about having community conversations at each of the grade levels, including the middle school as a separate grade level, even though it's the same building, to just help families and see how it applies. And even the idea of K to second, conversation, third through fifth, a conversation, middle school conversation, and maybe it would be helpful to decide to say, we're just going to have a simple community conversation, a round table, or doesn't have to be with us as a forum, but maybe a liaison from the committee to meet with a certain group of parents and just say, here's an opportunity for you to ask your questions. We're not experts on the curriculum. It's on the DESE website. I think there are links, I think there's some links that were in our agenda. We can certainly provide the information, but there are questions about how what we do in Lenox ties into the frameworks is probably what parents are going to want to be asking, and maybe we provide, an opportunity for just sort of a coffee and conversation rather than big presentation so that people can ask their questions and feel comfortable. Some parents haven't really had their need to very young children, or they haven't had a child yet in the middle school, and they're really wanting to just have a heads up as to what's happening. And there's often so many things happening so quickly that it speeds by parents before they have a chance to think about it, including just as being parents, right? Stuff comes up and you don't always know how it's going to come up. So maybe there's a thought to do it that way,
Yeah,
small group conversation.
I like the idea of breaking it down into rather than grade by grade, the four levels that the pre-K and then the 3 through 5. I would hesitate. Obviously you would give them the link and you would show, just from someone who has already been on that, has tried to filter. It's a lot. It's a situation. It's a lot of information. So I almost would want it to be simple, dumbed down a little bit. So we would be very specifically be talking about what you would like to adopt or what you would like to see in the classrooms here in Lenox, because it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah,
so maybe some type of a small presentation that breaks it down a little bit more, simplifies like what's actually, like Brenda just did for me in 30 seconds, something like that for the grades appropriately for sections.
And I think as part of that, it might be helpful, to Ronnie's point, to share with families, here are the frameworks,
Right.
as expansive as they are, and here is what we do in 6th grade.
Correct.
Much shorter presentation, comfort families and make sure they understand that what we're offering and what we hope to continue to offer does not fall beyond what the state has said you might want to consider.
Yeah.
And I
I'm like
think,
a quarter of a way through and it's like,
well, and the other thing that, and I think the state provides it, is almost like we do for our policy reviews. People can read all of it if they want, but in a sense, what, if anything, is changing is the most important part, and the summary of here's what's actually changing.
I think also we have to be really cognizant, and of course, I know we will, but I just have to say it, of those families that, that do choose to or are struggling with this and want to opt out, that they're treated with the same amount of respect and dignity for them and their families as the majority of folks that, it's a tough decision. It's tough, but it also singles out the child, it singles out the families, the child. It's a pull-out, program where the child will be removed from the classroom. It's not like back in the day, when my kids were going to school and they went on a Monday night, 6 weeks on a Monday night for LAMO. And so kids didn't really know if their friends weren't there, So we got to be a little sensitive to that too, I think.
I agree.
I guess last question is from a timeline perspective, it sounds like, is there any point at which it would be too late in the year and it would be creating problems for you into next year that you'd say, please, let's wrap this up and make sure we know by?
No, and I'll, Dr. Collins sort of alluded to this, and I say this with all possible due respect, but what we're actually doing and what we will almost certainly continue to do next year in grades 6, 7, and 8 regarding health education isn't threatened by these frameworks and almost certainly won't change. There is a broader political discussion in our country right now about some of these issues, and that's why we're here, truthfully. But in terms of what we do with our kids, I think it's important to make sure families understand what we are doing and how it's well within these frameworks, and certainly continue to offer them opportunities to select what may or may not be appropriate for their students. But in terms of what we do, having had exhaustive conversations with our health and PE instructors about this, unless you give me very specific, clear guidance, this should change, because this element of our curricula is your purview. Unless you give us clear direction, it won't change. The timeline won't impact what we do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And so what I'll do, we have a community engagement ongoing project, which is terrific. And I will circle up with folks before our next meeting to just make sure we have a clear, okay, here's how we'll tackle this, or an idea for how to tackle it, and bring it back to talk about at the next meeting. And if everyone feels like that sounds great, then we'll do that, or if we need to modify it, we'll modify it.
Do we have a subcommittee that has curriculum in its purview?
We don't have a curriculum subcommittee.
We used to have like learning and teaching, and it would kind of fall into something like that, right?
Yeah, we didn't re-up that committee this year.
Yeah, that's right.
So you're thinking this falls under community engagement?
Well, if the goal were to host or participate in some sort of set of sessions to give community members an opportunity to learn about and speak to it, I think that would be community engagement.
With the administration?
Yes. If we wanted to essentially create a subcommittee this topic was in their purview and they would come back with a recommendation in April, that would be open to us to do as well.
And another thought about a hybrid might be, Kim and I right now are on community engagement, but that for this thing, we say, who else wants to participate? My thinking about it is, if you're gonna have a community discussion, and we wanna just really have it to be that the school committee is there, so we are part of that, and we understand what's being said, keeping it smaller, but just like 2 people from, and looking at, we were just talking about different age groups, maybe a few of us wanna say, I'd like to participate in the community conversation about the youngest grades, or somebody, that might be a way to have broad participation on the committee, but not have it be this type of a setup.
Yeah, no, that's right, and
So it doesn't have to be the existing community engagement, but maybe we say, who's interested, and then communicate with you and figure out how to break it up in a way that makes sense in small groups.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking.
All right, well, if that sounds roughly directionally correct, I'll bring a sketch back for next time and we can modify from there. Does that?
I think that sounds appropriate.
That works. All right.
And we do have a policy, we have IGD, which is a policy on curriculum adoption.
Is it for a curriculum that we adopt as the school committee or for the district's adoption?
The school committee.
Okay. That's the one section we still have to review. We could completely change it in the next week.
It might be, I mean, you have to review it, but I think it might be that, and I don't know if it's in there, that there's general curriculum review, and then this one just has its specific carve-out that makes it different, and I don't know if we addressed that, I don't remember if we addressed it.
Yeah, but I was not up to speed on the program, so.
Yeah.
Well, we'll bring section I back for the next meeting as well. All right. Is that it on your list?
That wraps up my report, yes.
Thank you. Unfinished business, look at that, we're right into the community engagement.
So Kim and I met, actually, if you want
No,
to
go
start.
ahead.
Kim and I met to talk about really a lot of the things that came out of last year's conversation about community engagement and some of our ideas. It really felt like one of the things that we haven't gotten to the place we want to be is about student voice and about how to provide more opportunities for students. And Kim decided to focus on something that she had already been working on, so I'll let you talk about that, and then I'll talk about where I am with mine.
Sure. I am trying to start a program at Morris. Actually, it's kind of underway now. Odyssey of the Mind. I guess it was in Morris prior for I don't know how long ago. I never did this myself, so I'm learning a lot as we go along. Do you remember it?
Mm-hmm.
Were you in it?
I was not.
Oh, okay.
But I do remember Carol Rumpf being a very large, advocate for it for
Nice.
years and years and years.
I've heard about it just from a coworker, but it's a program, it's child-led, it's creativity and problem-solving program that teaches students how to develop and use their natural creativity to become problem solvers using STEM or STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering. The A is for arts and mathematics. It can be opened up for K through 12. Right now, I'm just piloting it with the 5th graders because I'm learning the whole thing myself. We had Thursday, November 7th, the State Association Director, Shalane Hutchins, came to present it to the 5th graders. They got very, very excited when they realized that they could go to Maine to present in their competition. And if they did well there, they could go on to the nationals, and that would take them to Michigan State University, where they would stay in the dorms, and that got them super excited. One step at a time. Then I had a parent information session on November 12th to answer any questions that parents might have had. There were several parents that reached out that weren't able to make that meeting, so I'm actually meeting with one community member and several parents tomorrow to just give them more information. So far, we have 12 students that have signed up. We were able to get a LEAF grant to cover the membership fee, and the PTO put aside some money to get up to 5 teams to the competition in Maine, if we get enough interest in that.
How big is a team?
7, so we could have, with one membership, you can have 5 teams of 7 students, so a total of possibly 35. And we're keeping it to the 5th grade. Like I said, it can be kindergarten through 12th. If you have different grade levels, that's fine, but then you would just go to the oldest. Your division would be based on the oldest students on the team. So yeah, I was just emailing Brenda today. We're hoping to get our first meeting. I'm going to have the 5th grade teachers also help me figure out who works well with each other. So the kids are sending back their signups with like rankings, like first, second, third choice of which program they want to be in, and then I'll get the 5th grade teachers to help me figure out who would work well together. And then we're hoping to have our first meeting sometime in December and give the kids who have signed up the expectations and maybe start brainstorming for their teams.
So is this an after-school program?
Yeah, it'll be after school, yep.
It's a great initiative because it's all about the kids.
Yeah, and so the other thing, fun thing too about community engagement is that these kids have to create a skit. They have to do, they have to have their what's the sets? And if they're not familiar with how to sew a costume, or they're not familiar how to put together a set, we can get people from the community that can help teach them. They can't physically do their project for them, but can teach them how to get these things done so that the kids can do their own projects.
You certainly have a lot of resources in the community in that
Yeah.
area.
So I've already
That's for
spoken
sure.
to Shannon O'Brien, yep, about, and that's the one community member tomorrow that I'm going to meet with, is someone who's interested to just
Sets and costumes and.
be involved, yep.
Shakespeare and.
Yeah, yep, yep,
Reach out to the business partners. That's wonderful. That's a great idea.
yep. Thank you.
Great idea.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing that, because our early brainstorm was also about, are there some kids that maybe aren't as involved in sport? Like, where are some of the kids needing, would they enjoy a more active participation? And then also, like Kim was just saying, connecting with the broader community and supporting the kids in a way that there was something to engage about, which I think is awesome. So thank you for doing that.
Sure.
That was your... And so we had made the decision to that was going to be a lot for Kim to do, so then I was talking about engaging with the students at 6th through 8th. And some of you may remember when we started out on the path of our new superintendent search, led to us getting Dr. Collins, a few of us, and Megan and I in particular, met with some of the students. And this was more at the high school. We didn't really have a brainstorm meeting with the middle schoolers. So our discussion and my feeling about it was to literally go to the school and meet with some of the student leaders about what are the things that you love about Lenox, what are the things you would like to see change, how would you like to go about doing that, as well as giving them some more information about what school committee does and getting more information about what they're doing. And basically in student leadership, on the student council, student government side, there's class officers running from 6th grade through 12th, and then there's student councils at the high school, and then there's a student group at the middle school, and there are 3 different advisors involved. So I've been reaching out to them, and it got a little caught up in the when and wow and how, but so far I've got 1 meeting scheduled and trying to get 2 more, and that would be separate from the middle school and the high school, because I do think their needs are different and want them to be able to communicate and feel like it's an opportunity to really communicate what their thoughts are, and then we'll brainstorm a little about how to think about what that might look like. And my thinking about it is to have some opportunity later in the year for students to present just in general on some of the things that they've told me about that they would like us as a school committee to hear more about, so they can think about what that, if they want to just come and talk to us, or if they want to have a presentation, or if they have something they're already working on. I've worked in this program that's Department of Justice, that's called the Spirit Program in Central Berkshire, and actually I'm doing a lead on this tomorrow at the Du Bois Middle School, and some of the model is similar, kind of asking students to talk about what's working, what are some of the challenges of the school, brainstorm about ideas so it's really student-centered as to how they might like to solve some of those problems, and how can adults support them. So that's kind of the framework that I'm thinking when I go and meet with these groups of students, and then would bring it back when appropriate to share the information that we receive. It's a little bit more interpersonal than some of our survey work, but it's a chance to engage and tell the students also about what we do, because some of them just might not really have much understanding about what we do. So that was our focus, was on the students this round. Community engagement can look different as we go forward. But that's where we're at.
Thank you, guys. That's great. And we have a school choice policy to approve. This is the remnant from the Section J omnibus last time around. Thank you to Ronnie for noticing in that enormous section that we did not have the up-to-date JFBB and JFBBR, which is the specific process by which we go through the school choice lottery and so forth. And so Amy went through it and just updated dates and timelines to reflect exactly what the process actually is. And I can attempt to answer any questions, though probably will fail if you have any.
And
But
I will pass it on, the thank you to Amy, actually, who at various times when we've had to vote on some of the mechanic sides of school choice, like how many slots are there and all of that, she is such an amazing keeper of process. And I think in having, what do we want to say, trained and supported a number of superintendents, she's been able to keep a through line so that we can have consistency, and the main focus being on transparency for the community to make sure that they are aware what the process is. So she put that all in there, and we had apparently actually passed it in the in a prior situation, and it didn't get properly into our actual written policies, so thank you to Amy. I just noticed it, she did the work.
And not just documenting, but I think she's done a lot to improve the process for
Yes.
families, which is great. So with our confidence in and thanks to Amy, I would accept a motion to approve these final two.
I'll make a
sections.
motion to accept JFBB as presented.
And JFBBR.
Oh, you want me to do both? And JFBBR as well.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It is approved. I don't believe we have any other new business, unless I'm forgetting something. In which case, we will move to an executive session without intention to return to cover a few updates that fall under provision section 21A3. So a motion to proceed in that manner would be welcomed.
So moved.
I will make a motion that we adjourn to executive session for the purposes of MGL Chapter 30A, discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation without intent to return to regular session.
You can second.
I'll second.
Seems like your level of commitment to the motion was more of a second anyway.
And that's a roll call.
And yes, this is a roll call vote.
Veronica Fenton, aye.
Warren Cass, aye.
Kimberly Winger, aye.
Michael DuPont, aye.
Kim Graham, aye.
Bob Lynch, aye.
All right, we are adjourned to executive session. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.